Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to season 3 of the Profit Power Hour, presented by Profit Coach. Love being in this industry, love being with you here today, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in to what I think will be a really, really helpful, practical, and informative session here today, talking about scalable labor efficiency. This is really the soft side of the numbers. Team engagement, retention, incentives, and how to motivate your people to greatness. Again, episode 3 of season 3. So we've been at this for a number of years. I'm excited to have some fantastic people on the call with us today. We'll get to them in just a moment, but jump into chat as always. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and we want to know where you're tuning in from. And one thing, since we're talking about people today, one thing that you appreciate about your team. I always like to mix a little bit of gratitude in here. So where are you tuning in from? One thing you appreciate about your team today. We are thrilled to have an expert lineup of panelists today. Adam Willis tuning in from Oahu. Adam, thank you for making time in your vacation to joining us. President at Nestwell PM. Jen Rulins, broker owner at One Focus PM, and also Mike Schrafer, president at Heirloom PM. Thank you guys. Really appreciate you being on here today. And me, Daniel Craig, author from NARP Accounting Standards. This is my last webinar to do as CEO of Profit Coach. On April 1, I slide into the Chief Strategy Officer seat here at Profit Coach, and Bradley Johnson is going to be taking the CEO suite. And really thankful to have him joining the team. We help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. And we want to make sure that on today's webinar, we answer your questions. Please be sure to drop those into the Q&A box so that we can be sure to answer those as we go along. All right, we're going to dive in. We're talking about scalable labor efficiency, team engagement, retention, incentives, how to motivate your people to greatness. As always, the goal here is to facilitate a transformation of mindset, help you move from financial fog to financial clarity, from gut-based decision-making to predictable forecasting, and ultimately from mediocrity to benchmark success. Are you ready? Can I get a little bit of, put your hands up in the air for the panelists? All right. We're going to talk about engagement a lot today. I did a survey of 12 of our top clients a year ago. A year ago, we hosted a kind of a mastermind, in-person mastermind. I had a broker owner for about 12 of our top clients. And the survey basically said, what is your number one challenge today? And the results of that survey were very interesting. Here's what the feedback we got from real PMs, top performing PMs. I'm talking about companies that have anywhere from $500 to $1.2 million in profit every year. Here's where some of the feedbacks. Staffing, getting people to show up. I know everyone says go remote, but how do you ensure people actually do the work? Finding the portfolio manager I need to add to the team. Operations feel shaky, had to let a couple of people go. Accountability is the general issue. Getting our employees to make decisions for themselves. Staffing, getting our team to consistently use the tools and resources we give them. Strong leadership team. Hiring, internal communication. Like the theme there from all of these contributors to this particular mastermind a year ago was engagement. Number one challenge. And if you're on the call today, I'm guessing that a lot of that resonates to you. So I want to throw up a poll here and just hear from you. What are some of your big challenges when it comes to employee engagement? And we're going to throw up that poll right here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how is the overall engagement of your team, 10 being high? So just love to get some feedback from you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably going to get a little bit of a bell curve. I'm curious what you panelists would rate yourself. I'm just going to actually put you guys on the spot. Jen, we're going to start with you. How would you rate the overall engagement of your team right now?
8.
8. Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and I'll tell you, I was ready to go like 9.5 or 10, and like two things in the last month that like people have said where I went, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what
Yeah.
do you think we do here? And just once in a while, like something comes up that makes me like demoted a little bit, but generally I'm thinking pretty high.
Yeah. It's awesome. Mike, how about for you?
Yeah, I actually have a very data-driven answer for this. So we use Office Vibe, and we have a 76% response rate from our staff, and we're at a
Good.
7.6.
Way to
So
go, man.
7.6.
Okay. Adam?
Good morning. I would give us a 9. We just had our last B player resign last week, and everyone else is anxiously engaged. If you want to go data driven like Mike, we do a company pulse every other week, and out of 1 to 5, we are 4.78.
Very good. 4.78
I
times
forgot I
2.
do have some data. I
Okay,
forgot.
go for it, Jen.
It would actually put us at 9. Just for we do EOS org checkups. We're religious about those
Nice.
quarterly, and on average, we're falling in the it would be the top 10th percentile on those 20 engagement questions.
That's great. So we can put a 2 multiplier on yours, Adam, that put that at a 9.5. That's good. Mike, we use Office Vibe as well, and we hit an all-time high, and we've held it steady for a couple of weeks at 8.8. So we're trying to go for 9. Okay, let's put the feedback up here from everybody else, and you guys can see where people are landing. 8 is the most common response. We're shifting kind of towards the 7s. If you kind of look at a weighted average there, I don't know. I'm gonna give this a 7.6. Okay. So what does it look like to get that from a 7.6 to an 8 to a 9 to a 10? That's what we want to talk about and dial in today. What we're going to do is contextualize this just briefly in terms of some numbers. We always do that, but focus most of our time on questions like, how do you know if you have a problem with employee engagement? Are there signs to spot before people start leaving? How do you assess and diagnose and then treat employee engagement issues with really practical methods? From a data perspective, we've talked a lot about the shift in profitability in this industry. You can see benchmark profitability, top 25% has gone from 25% to 32%. And a lot of that has to do with an improvement in labor efficiency in this industry. And that's contributed that's derived from prices going up, revenue per unit going up. I do think there have been meaningful improvements in the ability for people to output more work through more scalable processes and workflows and systems in the organization. But what often happens is we see this number, we start chasing it, and so we take, I would say, maybe a little bit of a short-sighted approach to improving labor efficiency. We're like, hey, we got to get from average, which is 2.9, up to benchmark, which is 3.96. That means, wow, top performing companies, they get $4 of revenue for every dollar that they spend on labor. How can I drive my pricing? How can I reduce pay, hire global talent, improve productivity? And I think sometimes we stop taking a holistic approach here. And so I'm going to throw out a problem, and the problem is just kind of what I just described, is this sort of do more, better, faster approach to labor efficiency. All right, team, we got to do more, better, faster. Have you ever had like talk to your team, Jen, Mike, Adam, like said, hey guys, we need to do more, better, faster. And they just felt really motivated by that. Like, oh man, they just get the human element of management, right? That's just not exactly what connects with people. And yet that's often how we think about improving labor efficiency. All right, we have to have a checklist. And then we realize, okay, yeah, the checklist is helpful. It's not all about the checklist. All right, now we got to roll out the workflow software. Then we realize, okay, but the team's not actually using the software. It's not all about the software. Cheaper labor. So we're going to go hire some global talent, but those people don't always meet expectations. Same with onshore labor, no different. So maybe it's not all about the cheaper labor. Revenue per unit, got to go fee max, and then that didn't totally solve our problem. And does any of that sound familiar, right? Like those are the steps we walk through. And I think the problem is that none of these approaches speak to the human element of labor efficiency. That's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to go to Jen. Jen, I want you to just tell us a little bit about your story over the last several years of engaging the human element of labor efficiency, employee engagement, retention. What have you learned?
Yeah. The basic timeline, we've had the business 11 and a half years. And for the first couple of years, it was just me and a couple of helpers. So the genius with many helpers thing worked really well. And then I bought a company that was a couple times the size of mine. And I went up to a team of about 7 or 8. And that was the first time I was really taxed with like, okay, like, how do you approach a team? Because with 1 or 2 people, it's really just intuition, relationship driven. And did I flounder? I didn't lose people though at first. I didn't lose people. I was able to keep them, but they weren't working well for us. So this all kind of culminated in COVID. So in 2019, we instituted EOS. So we now had standards. We knew who was a right person and a wrong person. We started doing process documentation. So we had some real hard and fast now data, KPIs, scorecards. So now underperformance was really well documented, and it was just very, very clear what was going to make the cut and not. And I think when people talk about this journey of getting all right people on the team, they just talk about like, yeah, so we just like were ruthless in our decisions and we did it.
Yeah.
I really struggled in the not in the getting rid of people, adding the right people back in. And man, did I flounder a lot. So, and we worked really hard. We used Culture Index. I used consultants. I got education, da 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 da. So during COVID, when labor shortage got really bad, we were in deep with techs and we were really doing a lot of maintenance and construction work. And we just hit a wall where I said, for the first time in my life, I have money, I have work that needs to be done, and I can't get people to do it for love or money. And I was losing my people. So, and I was losing them in a weird, like they would like kind of sneak out. Like they didn't give us 2 weeks notice or like quit in a fury. They would leave like their credit card and everything and then like leave for lunch and never come back. And we'd have to be like, do you work here still? I don't understand. And yeah, that got real awkward. That happened like a lot to the point where we had to realize it was leadership and it really came from me. And I was trying, the problem was I was trying really, really hard. So what did we do? I ended up delegating a lot of this stuff, policy creation, communication of that to my director of operations, who's just a lot better fit for that. I was just kind of always had to do it because I was in charge. So I delegated a lot to them. Let's see. We had to do a lot of wage adjustments and benefit adjustments. We did some hard, like, especially in the maintenance department, I think wages went up 25%, but across the company, they went up, moderately. PTO went up. We instituted.
You put any color on that, Jen?
Yeah, I think you used to start at 2 weeks and then it took like, you would get to 3 weeks in 5 years. And now you start at 2 weeks in second year, you get 3 weeks. And by 5 years, you're at 4 weeks. So, I mean, I don't know how it ranks to other people. It felt really generous here, but I haven't been employed in a long time. So I don't even really know what's out there. We really increased tool and tech allowances. So like RTMs get a technology bonus once a year. Technicians, maintenance technicians get a tool bonus once a year. And that was a lot bigger than it used to be and delivered the way they wanted. They wanted it on their paycheck. They didn't want it in a gift card or whatever. We really started focusing on that org checkup. So where do we stand on these to make sure everybody's engaged? It really helped us make better decisions. I'll say our last 3 hires we made essentially at the same time, mid-level hires. We got 3 amazing people. They're all still with us. And that was not our pattern. We were churning through new hires a little too fast. So that's gone well. Half-day Fridays, that was huge. Half-day Fridays, we just now work like 4 9s and a 4. Then
what was big about that? Like,
yeah,
you're still working the same amount of hours.
Morale's a lot higher.
Yeah, but what do you think? What was it about half-day Friday that like, why is that? Why did that impact them versus 5/8?
I should have asked the question. I'll tell you, I have my employee survey from this last quarter, and like 80% of the people mentioned it as one of their top
Wow.
3 favorite
Okay,
things.
it just does. All right.
They say half-day Fridays. In their language, it's that and flexible schedule, stuff like that. I know if you talk to the techs, like the blue-collar maintenance guys, they like, I think, the ability to go do side work. They would like to work 4/10s and have
Yeah.
3 days off to not sit on their couch, but to go do other work. And then the office staff, I don't know. I think actually some of the gals have told me they leave their kid at daycare and go do stuff without their kids that afternoon, and they really treasure that afternoon.
Yeah.
It's really easy to give for PTO to turn it into a 3-day weekend too. 4 hours, you have a 3-day weekend, and the RTMs enjoy the same benefit. They're working a half day on Fridays.
Yeah.
Awesome. The only other thing we did that was like a little splashy was the office snack bar. So, everybody hits the gas station, right, and gets the cookies or the whatever and the soda and the energy drink. And so we've replicated to the best we can with their favorite items, the kinds of things they might get at a convenience store. We keep it in the conference room. So guests, it's like we offer it to guests, but it's here all the time. And they really seem to like it. It's a huge challenge for us to keep it stocked and go to Sam's Club and all that, but it works out. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Any huge lessons learned, like people listening, like, hey, this is what worked for you, but kind of from a meta perspective, like, what, as you look back, any big lessons learned in terms of diagnosing and solving this challenge in your business?
Well, for us, it was working the issues through EOS. So identification of issues and then solving them. And so we were able, so if that process started in 2019 and we're, 5 and so many years into it, there's been some iterations. We really feel like we've cracked the code in the last year just because we've had this success. We haven't had anybody leave. And I was interesting the way Adam put it, like our last B player resigned. I'm sitting there. I'm sitting on all A players right now. And that's a really strong feeling.
Yeah, that's great. One question that came in here from Caitlin, how has the half-day Friday impacted the business, specifically leasing and maintenance? Jen?
Zero. Now, because they are 100% on their processes, things are working really smoothly. Like we don't have so to prepare for a half-day Friday just means scheduling, communication, prioritization of your week. And so luckily we were in a place where we felt confident doing that. And so for instance, they don't know this yet, but I'm putting together a promotion to do some things. And anyway, the prize, if they achieve what the tasks, it's all no Fridays in July. So essentially I'll give them 16 hours holiday, but they'll have 3-day weekends the whole of July, which would be a really cool thing in the middle of summer. That's kind of our jam here, is being outside.
Sweet. Jen, how important was the quarterly survey for you in terms of getting Adam, do you guys do quarterly surveys? Yes, no, thumbs up.
Semi-annual.
Yeah, semi-annual. What about you, Mike? Employee surveys?
Office Vibe primarily.
Okay. Yeah, I would say about 2 years ago, we started doing quarterly team surveys. And when we do our quarterly annual planning, the team sits down for about 2 hours, an hour and a half, 90 minutes to 2 hours. And it's like a 19-page document. I'm not exaggerating. Of like long form paragraph feedback on, what do you think we should start doing as an organization? What do you think? I'll just tell you what the questions are on our survey. What was the biggest win from the quarter? What do you think we should stop? One thing we should stop doing. One thing we should start doing. How would you rate culture and how can we improve it? How would you rate communication and how can we improve it? And what are the all-stars from the quarter? And so those are the questions that get asked, and we found some painful feedback at times, but it's been super useful. And I think that feedback and acting on that as part of our quarterly planning process has been big for us in improving that engagement score over time.
Question about those surveys. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Are those anonymous surveys, y'all?
You know what? We just stopped doing it anonymous. I don't believe in anonymous. Okay. The way we did it this quarter for the first time was we didn't tell people it was going to be anonymous. We read it anonymously as a leadership team so that we didn't have bias when we first went through it. And then there's some stuff that came up and we're like, we kind of need to know who this person is. And we had that data.
Yeah. The question I have for you guys is, so we do ours anonymously. It is not as high level questions as what Daniel's doing. But we've realized by being religious about doing it, and we've changed the wording to be a little bit more open-ended and get more details, but we've found the quality of these to go up as they found that they can trust us. And one thing we did to build that trust is there's like an ask me anything in here. So it's an anonymous, and I am under the obligation to every single thing that is asked of me, I address in the quarterly state of the company. So if it's, you know, a fart joke, I put it on the slide and have a fart joke reaction. But normally it's the hard questions. It's the hard questions they might not want to raise their hand and put their face to. And because I do address them openly and transparently, I've found they've grown more valuable over time. And I wonder for you all, because it feels like a wonderment to us. Have you seen anything similar, or do they stay like kind of shallow?
Is that, who's that directed at? Mike? I felt like you're
I
asking.
said more with the anonymous ones.
Okay. Adam, do you guys do it anonymously?
Yeah, ours is a little different. We're engaging quite often with randomized questions that are filtered, meaning we can pick and choose from hundreds of different questions, and they kind of rotate through, and there are a few static ones. Those are not anonymous. Our anonymous surveys is semi-annual, and we have found that people are being radically candid, and that's more of an engagement component. Like, hey, how are I can't think of the questions. I'll find them and I'll post them in the chat. But we are doing a lot of different surveys. 2 of them are anonymous here.
I see.
Okay, cool
And
stuff.
I love them. I love them.
Yeah, super helpful feedback we get as well. All right, Mike, let's just tell us a little bit about, you know, your journey, employee engagement, mistakes made, lessons learned, victories had.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know anything, but I do. Just the harder you work at it, I feel like the more you know, the less you feel like you know. Our journey is we've been out for 10 years. Right now we're sitting at 86 employees. We hover around 100 in the summer. So there's been a big growth in staff and a lot of learning. I feel like it's almost like a circle of saws you got to sharpen, and you sharpen them all and you grow a bit and you break everything and you sharpen them again. And we kind of had I was kind of noting our process of getting better at hiring. I feel like that's kind of a common thread. We're talking about A and B and C players, and you know, it's kind of, we're circling around bringing on the right people on the team to start with. And you know, we started with DISC early on. We got into predictive index, culture index, got into EOS. All of those kind of improved that process. Within wages and benefits improved, kind of put a lot of focus on that. We dove into having an HR person in-house. And the latest thing has really been getting deep into top grading, which is where that ABC player thing comes from. So it's a lot of focus again and again, going back to getting better and better at bringing people onto the team. Because I think that like you can really struggle with B and C players. Hard to move things forward. You get stuck in the mud a little bit, and that's a big part of it. So I don't know, just a couple of notes that I think that's been our journey as we grew from a small team that you can put your hands around to a bigger and bigger team. But yeah, we do a couple of things similar to Jen. We do 410s with all of our field techs. We're able to pull that off. We have them a straddle schedule. So they work a Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday 1 week, and then the next week they work Tuesday through Friday. So they get a 4-day weekend, 2-day weekend, 4-day weekend, 2-day weekend. And that allows us to have staffing 5 days a week, but everybody's on 410s. That is all of our field guys love that. So we do that.
Is that just the field guys or in office PMs as well?
That's just the field team. And then the office team, we do a similar thing in the summer. We call it summer hours. And in the summer hours from June to September, it's 410s. We take Fridays off. So kind of similar thing. It's warm, it's nice here. So everybody's got family, kids, daylight's till like 9:30 at night. So yeah.
Sweet. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What else? What else have been some key things?
A big thing that we do, which we were kind of chatting about a little bit earlier, we have a real estate investment program that we do with our staff. We call it HERO. It's Heirloom Employee Real Estate Ownership Program, and we created a pot of cash that we put a piece of our profits in every year, and I'm a big, I got into this because I own property, and so I wanted to share that with our employees, and we do some kind of sharing that with our community as well. We do a couple of different things monthly around that. But so I love this saying that you're not an investor until you run out of money. Up until then, you're just buying stuff, right? Everybody can go buy some property, but you're an investor when you learn to recycle the cash, and you can actually, that's the only way you can scale without a really big W-2 income. And so, um, and so I think the thing to becoming an investor is kind of accumulating a little pot of cash, then learning to recycle that. And so really what our program is we create a little pot of cash, and they can, through a couple parameters, I have to approve a deal, and we have a little bit of a curriculum that they kind of need to go through to learn some investment intelligence. And not everybody can pull it together, but if they can, we'll support them getting into an investment property out of this pot of cash that we accumulate as a business. And that's kind of like way to partner with our staff to build investment properties. And I got a whole list of parameters, kind of things around that, but that's something we do that's been pretty interesting and engaging for A players, stuff like that.
Can you unpack that just a little bit more, Mike? That's really interesting.
Yeah. So it's a $20,000 to $50,000 loan. It's 18 to 12 to 24 months, sometimes 18 months, kind of the goal. And we put 5 to 10%. It's some of it's fluid because we were kind of, it's growing and evolving as our business does. It's kind of, every so often we revisit it and kind of look at it, kind of put somewhere between 5 and 10% of our profits into that pool each year. So the pool grows, the pool gets repaid back as the investments are done. I kind of really see 5 different ways that you can buy property without a lot of cash, or you can get your cash back. And we teach all of those, and trying to turn people into fishermen versus giving fish. And yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. We have some priority where, like, we prioritize someone that has a lower salary in the company first over a higher salary, because we kind of learned really quickly. It's just one of the pitfalls we found is, like, a couple of the top people were really easily able to take advantage of it and then, wipe it out for everybody because they had good means, and that's not really the point. So we prioritize lower salary first, and then lower amount of rentals first. We have a half a dozen people in our company that have a bunch of rentals, and we just, at one point we were at about 50% of our staff having rentals that were the office salary side. I don't know if we're right at that today, but probably at least a third. And so if you have 3 or 4 rentals, then we're going to prioritize the person that has none or one or something like that. So it's kind of meant to just be, you're going to pull yourself up by the boots or by your bootstraps, but sometimes it's kind of helping someone with the boots themselves, given boots. So yeah.
What percent of your team has participated in the program at one point or another?
We've had 7 so far.
That's awesome.
But several more try. We go through the course. We have a handful of people that are buying rentals that don't participate in it, because ultimately they got to pay it back. It's not a lot of interest, but it's not like free money. And so if they can figure out how to do it on their own, it's just easier. So yeah.
I think one of the big takeaways here, Mike, is if you want an engaged team, you need to hire engaged people right from the outset. You talked a lot about a number of different iterative steps, culture index, predictive index, top grading, kind of, distill what a couple of your big takeaways are in terms of validating engagement on the front end.
Yeah. I think that, in a lot of that stuff, you kind of hear along the way that, it's okay to treat an A player a little differently. And like there's a really good example. There was this younger guy we hired. I think it was his first kind of like salary job. He's the manager of a Taco Bell, I think. But he really showed up in the interview and did really well. We brought him on as kind of an entry-level property manager, and he blew us away with his ability to put together some spreadsheets and pricing. One of our things is vacation rental management. Manage about 120 vacation rentals. Pricing is a very dynamic, big component of that, and he just crushed it. And I pulled him aside for no reason, like at 5 months, just to give him a raise, to really clearly signal that that was important. And it was really meaningful for him, more meaningful than I thought in his life, and
Mhm.
really cool to do. Try to like make examples of that here and there
Mm,
that are completely out of process,
mm,
because A players are a little out of process, and
mhm,
that's important. And then also trying to educate. I think A players, I think that's not a generalized term. It's a specific term. You can be an A player at a role and a C player at another role. It's not you, it's your approach to the job.
mhm,
And we can have some A players that are really good at managing some stuff, and maybe they're not perfect at developing people yet.
mhm.
And so we've been doing a lot of education on the top grading, stuff, and for them to help understand that if you manage too many B and C players, you're going to get stuck
Mhm,
and get buried being the genius with 1,000 helpers.
mhm.
Um, so some of that stuff. That's
Any
kind of cool.
any resources that you could throw out for the audience today in terms of top grading specifically?
I think that if you're an Audible or a book reader, I listen on Audible and then I buy the book to put it on my walls like a trophy.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But the book's called Who, and then he did a newer version. That one's like 18 years old, but it's a new version of the same book, same authors. I think it's called Foolproof Hiring.
Okay,
That really unpacks top grading at a pretty approachable level. So
that's great. Awesome. Good stuff, Mike. Thanks for sharing.
yeah,
Yeah, Who, the A Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart, I think is the full title. And then you've got a newer edition there, Foolproof Hiring. Awesome. Sweet. Adam, let's hear a little bit about your journey. I know you guys are kind of on the cutting edge of trying some new compensation models in your organization, sort of around this whole ABC player concept. You've thought about that a lot. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, our journey, we've been kind of on a fast growing place and on a rate. And a lot of the teammates who didn't have like a get it, want it, have capacity. And so we went through a fair amount of turnover, unfortunately, but it was kind of addition by subtraction. And coming off of last year's broker owner, a smart guy that Danny knows very well, said a few A players can run circles around a group of A players. Steve Jobs actually said that. The guy who we know quoted him.
Yeah.
And so we had been on a mission to kind of jettison off anybody who didn't have the get it, want it, have capacity, and get them in the right seats. And then we started hiring around them. And now we have more remote staff than we do stateside. And we have gone through a lot of growing pains and being very definitive on who we want, what their roles are, etc. Do you want me to dive into the kind of the compensation here?
I do,
Save
I
that
do,
for
I
later?
do.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's hit it now. And just
So
kind of tie that into your journey, because I also want to hear your thoughts on like specifically how you got to defining ABC players in your organization, because that those terms get thrown around a lot, and I think some specificity would be helpful.
yeah, absolutely. Let me look that up. I have a very clear
Yeah,
definition of what an A player is. And I'll put it in the chat if
yeah,
that's all right.
that's great. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so part of our outlook has been aligning people to the corporate's goals and initiatives or my vision, right, and tying that. And I think historically I've done a very poor job at like communicating my vision and saying this is where we're going. And I think it was either because I didn't know where I wanted to go, or I was afraid of planting a flag and it was kind of nebulous, like, oh, or what the company's purpose really was for existing. And where I have finally landed on is that I have a duty or an obligation to kind of enrich these people's lives who are trading their time for money, basically. And I wanted them to be part of this journey. And so our compensation plan is now drive a correlation between my visions and our annual goals, our quarterly goals, our monthly goals, our weekly tasks, if you will, and have driven them to where they kind of are getting a piece of the pie. There's really two types of employees. This isn't a new concept. It came from the tech world, but there's basically makers or individual contributors. And then there's management or leaders, and those are the leaders of the people that are carrying out a lot of the tasks. And so by kind of defining those two different roles, we have been able to rank and stack everyone in based off of their job description, their contributions, their four main tasks, saying, oh, you're an M1 or you're an M3. And so the makers are M's, and they go 1 through 7. And then we have managers, or sorry, individual contributors, makers are 1 through 7. And then our leaders or managers are 1 through 5. And they have like traditional job titles, but we also have some really fun internal job titles like Maestro, Wizard. God, what are some of the other fun ones? I got to look these up because they're great, but they're very meaningful in working with people. I know a lot of our identities. I take that back. I think a lot of our identities are tied up into our job titles. We're just, a lot of us are in a fortunate position to be able to pick our own job title, so it becomes a little bit more trivial. But working with overseas and remote people, that they find job titles to be a very important thing. And so we have some really great, fun job titles that are used internally, but they're also external. So I have coordinator, specialist, pro, ace, wizard, maestro, captain, director, VP, C-suite team. So just fun titles, and they also have external job titles associated with them.
And Adam, just to clarify, like that's with
Sure.
Those levels are within a particular function, right?
Yes.
In many cases, you've got multiple,
Yeah,
like, so that, like, when you've told me about this in the past, one of the things that was intriguing to me is that you're sort of solving this, how do I have an experience of trajectory and movement without necessarily becoming a manager or starting to do something different?
Yeah, and so I think we're all fairly familiar with the Peter principle, where it's like, oh, I don't have something for this A player, and so I'm just going to promote him to a manager, and then all of a sudden he's no longer effective, and he's indifferent, and he's not a very good leader. And so you have this Peter principle issues. They're promoted to the highest level before they become inadequate or something like that, right? And so we, by design, we have said, here is a career path for you. So you're currently an M2, which is, or an M4, which is externally you're an associate, but internally you're known as a pro. And your job is you're so good, you never make a mistake, you toe the line, you live the core values, right? So these are these things you do. But if you want to go to an M5, here are the things that you need to do. And so I basically spelled out a career path for them. And then we also have this conversation where we say, hey, do you want to go the leadership route? Do you want to lead other people? Do you want to manage other people? Or do you want to stay, go all the way up to an M7 or a maestro, and you're actually creating and making things better, but you're not managing anyone else. Mm-hmm. So by outlining them, I'm getting them aligned with where we're going, and I can say, oh, I have this person pegged as an M6. Another beautiful part about having these roles spelled out is I can say, hey, you're currently an M3. This is what you need to do to go to an M4. So when you're doing these things, another beautiful thing is when I'm going out and I'm hiring and someone's going to be like, that's going to cost me 80 grand or 30 grand or whatever it is, I can say, well, they're coming in as an M5. This is what this job requires of them. These are the skill sets that's required of them. And so when they're coming in, or people will say, I demand $15 an hour. That role normally pays $6. So now we have a very uncomfortable situation where we have other people that have the same skill set that are making $6 an hour. This person's asking 15. There's obviously not alignment there, and that's awkward. If I hire that person, then I've just upset my existing RTMs. So on and so forth. So having these pay bands, so once we get them on this career path, we also have pay bands. And we say an M1 makes, I'm going to use a remote team members, get a little more specific. A remote team member can make anywhere from, let me pull this up. Sorry.
Take your time.
Yep. So a remote team member can be, if you're an M1, you have this pay band between $5 and $6 an hour. When you're an M2, you're anywhere from $5.50 to $7 an hour. And these pay bands give me some elasticity, saying I can still give you raises without you actually going up in rank, or I can put you up in rank, but I'm not actually paying you more money. And I can say, these are the things you need to do, the levers that you need to pull, the qualities that you need to exude to move up these pay bands. And then we also are taking a portion of our profits. So year over year growth. So if we make $100,000 net profit in 2023, and this year we make $200,000 in net profit in Q1 of 2024, I'll take that $100,000 and I'm spreading it amongst my leadership team. But then anyone who is a maker, I'm sorry, there's an airplane flying over the top of me.
Okay, we can't hear it.
Okay, like right over the top of me. So a portion of the profits, company profits, for the leaders, that is spread amongst them and their rank and stack. So wherever they're at, they get a portion of that, and they have the ability to pull the biggest levers. They really have the ability to affect profits and drive kind of those outcomes. The people, the makers or individual contributors, if you will, those guys have a portion of their salary that is derived from their compensation plan and what tier they're in. And so they can earn, if you're an L1, you can earn up to 5% of your annual salary. And the way that is weighted, I want to say 50% of it is based off of 50% of it is based off of their rocks that they have that quarter. 25% off of it is based off of their peer review, and 25% of it is based off of, man, is Mark
Other
on the
like
call?
operational metrics.
Yeah, operational metrics, basically. And I'll try and find it. I'll put it in the chat. But they can earn a portion of it, and it's fantastic because we're actually measuring. We're tying the outcome. So if they pick up a quarterly rock and they land that plane, we're paying them for it, right? If they're really showing up for their manager, we're compensating them for that. If they're really knocking off all of their to-dos, all of their tasks, everything that's in Lead Simple, everything that Danny is helping us measure and Profit Coach to drive those outcomes, they're getting a portion of their bonus based off of that. And so it's really aligning everything. And so when people are like, I'll take 3 rocks this quarter because I know I can make more money. So they're not affecting bottom lines. It is kind of more of a guarantee, but they still can control their contributions and be recognized for it.
Awesome. A lot of thought and sophistication there. But I love the whole idea of giving people a sense of trajectory and pathway within a role without necessarily having to switch roles or be leaders. That's awesome. How's the team responded, Adam, at a high level?
Yeah, we've been testing it for 6 months, and it's been super well received. Everyone is kind of career driven, and I say, hey, we're a growing company. This is where we want to be in year 1, year 2, year 3 from now. Who's coming with me? And this is what it means. And everybody knows exactly which way we're going.
It's awesome. I love what you said there. You feel you have a duty to enrich the lives of the people who are contributing to the success of the company. That's really, really well said. Love that. Just one little tidbit on that, kind of a mistake that I've made quite a bit is just not giving enough visibility on the future of the company and what that looks like from an annual goals perspective and a quarterly objectives perspective. And we've really tried to dial that in the last couple of quarters and have received a lot of great feedback in terms of, hey, I feel so much more connected. And the way we did that is we have a one company-wide huddle on Monday morning, and I literally spend 5 minutes like, guys, here's the 5 to 10 year goal, here's the annual goals, and here's the, the 3 quarterly objectives, and just getting that in front of people on a weekly basis has been helpful. So we've talked a lot about benefits, compensation, engagement. I want to just ask a couple of questions as we start to wrap up here. Just like, what would you guys say are some telltale indications of an engagement problem? I think there's probably scenarios in which like, hey, we don't even know that we have an engagement? Just rapid fire. What are some key indications, like tolerable versus intolerable behavior in a workplace environment? Jen?
So the weekly scorecard, the KPIs, people don't hit those every single week, but their reaction to that, that could be a difference in engagement. Let me see. So in our level 10 meetings, we're actively flushing out issues. So whether they're actively producing issues in that time and their level of involvement in the problem solving of it is a telltale sign. And that's something we work with our leaders who lead those meetings at the department and company level to. You're a facilitator, you need to have your finger on the pulse of that and be addressing it. The only other thing that we're doing that's really helping with that is the quarterly conversations, which I can't remember if I think it's an EOS tool, but we've been using those and retrained on those a couple of quarters ago. And man, we're getting a whole lot more out of them. So to your point, Dan, you were talking about in your quarterlies, you're reviewing that employee survey. We're reviewing those and the quarterlies. And the quarterlies have been identifying, luckily so far minor issues, but issues that the team then sees some action or follow up on. So again, we're building trust in that communication.
That's awesome. How about for you, Mike? Some telltale indicators of engagement. How would you respond?
I might not be really relevant or revelationary at all, but I think like this contribution in a lot of ways, you can see it through L10s and different kinds of meetings. I think people kind of lay in the weeds and don't really they're just the ones that aren't speaking in a meeting and they lay back a little bit. I always try and facilitate meetings when I'm in a meeting, and I try and pull people in that aren't. And I think that that's an interesting thing when you pull somebody in that's kind of, laying back and not really engaging and just kind of seeing what falls out of their mouth a little bit.
Yes.
But I don't know. I love to kind of chase in meetings people that aren't really contributing. And a lot of times that's usually kind of a bellwether for people that are starting to get unengaged and stuff like that. Kind of curious about where they're at with their path, their career, stuff like that. So
don't fill the conversation vacuum, right? Like that's such a temptation for us as leaders. This meeting isn't going fast enough. We're not solving these. I'm going to do it. I'm going to solve it. Allowing that awkward vacuum of, oh, hey, hi. Allowing that awkward vacuum of problem solving in your meetings to see who will step up. That's really good. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, Adam. One other question I wanted to throw out there, and you guys can all speak to this, but like, have you seen any significant shifts in your organization where people are like, I want to become a great performer and I want to make Nestwell great? Have you seen that shift in any particular individual or in your team more globally? And what do you think contributed to actually cultivating that desire for greatness?
I think every time I've seen it, it's usually been after I've shared a bunch of our visionary goals, like our 1-year, 5-year, 10-year. Someone will follow up with me after the meeting and be like, I want to be a part of that. I want that role you talked about or something like that. That's been one of the ways that I feel like I've pulled that from the group and seen who kind of like there's more than just that, but I think that's always been interesting to me, who follows up with me afterwards when we do that.
Awesome. How about for you, Adam? Especially with the growth trajectory that you guys have had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think I talk a lot about our vision, and I'm massively transparent about our P&L. So anyone who's on our leadership team, and half of them are remote now, true leaders. My chief of staff is in Nicaragua. Absolutely adore him. But we're constantly talking about and not harping on, but conveying the vision. This is where we're going. This is where we're at today. And that has now kind of caught fire to where I'm kind of lost touch with it a little bit. So when we're interviewing people, we are only hiring people who are currently being very well compensated, are not looking for a job. For the most part, all of them are still employed, and they've all been managers or trainers at call centers. And so they've had that managerial experience. And so when we bring them in, they're coming in at a low level, but they're still quickly moving up through the ranks because they're already A players. at another place and we ask them to take a bet on us, that chief of staff also spends a week with them talking about the Nestwell way, the Nestwell experience, our mission, vision, values, where we're going. And so that's what I mean. I've kind of like passed that torch on, and now I just kind of beat that drum.
It's awesome. Any thoughts for you, Jen, in terms of cultivating that I want to become great and I want to make this company great?
Yeah, just one really practical thing we've done that helped us improve better and then use the vision is that we took me out of the hiring process, because as the visionary, I just sell the vision. I sell it really hard, really well, and it wooed some of the wrong people here. So those 3 great hires we made like in the last like 6 to 9 months, those, I mean, I was consulted and talked to, but I wasn't in the interviews. Now I'm laid on thick once they're onboarded. So I'm part of the onboarding process, and that constant communication of vision, of near term, farther term, painting a picture has been really, really valuable to get that engagement, retention. And I haven't seen an overwhelming abundance of team members coming to me and asking for ways to move forward. But as we've gotten more A players, I see more signs of individual, what would I say, taking advantage, like taking initiative, individuals taking initiative and trying some different things. And that's, I try to encourage it.
Yeah. One of the things that's exciting is when you create the opportunity for people to contribute to the conversation around the direction of the company, and they begin to like use language like, this is our company, and here is stuff that we can do to improve the culture of our company. And I think for just one thing is just presenting that opportunity, like, hey guys, what do you think this should look like? We just laid out last week, we had our 4-day retreat, and we laid out, our 5-year vision for 1,000 clients. And we did something that we really felt was risky, which was like, guys, let's collaborate on what the success criteria would be for this journey. How would we need to go about this journey for it to feel like a win for you? So we came up with 6 success criteria for the growth journey that everybody sort of spoke into. We kind of distilled, and we talked about like, what are the specific habits that we would need to have as an organization in order for this to occur. And we let them speak into that. And that, I think, just allowing that opportunity to collaborate and have their voice in what the company is gives them a sense of ownership that I think for us has started to make them want to make the company better, because now they feel like they have a voice in that conversation. So that's something that's been helpful for us. All right. We want to wrap up with talking about a model for how to build a scalable approach to labor efficiency, both from a client value creation perspective, as well as a team performance perspective. And this is something that we've been working on for several months here at Profit Coach. And I want to invite you to a deep dive workshop on the concept of what we're calling data-driven process design. This is something, it's a framework. It's not a product, it's a framework, something that you can use as a way of thinking about driving value creation and team performance in your company. And I'm going to share that with you in detail as we wrap up here in just a moment. But if you have been piqued by this conversation, you're like, hey, what's the next step? I don't even know where I stand in regard to labor efficiency. I don't know how I would actually move the needle and improve engagement and retention as I scale this company and maintain and improve labor efficiency over time while maintaining my rock star A players in the organization. We'd like to help you with that. I want to encourage you to get clear on where you are today with regard to labor efficiency using the metrics and benchmarks available to you in the NARPM accounting standards. You can follow the URL on the screen, certainly get converted, get in the game, see how you stack up. But I want to offer you the opportunity to do something we haven't offered before, and that is to schedule a scalable labor efficiency planning call with our team. And the goal of that call would be to ask you some pointed questions to help you identify 1 to 3 steps that you can use to dial in a more scalable approach to labor efficiency in your business, looking at it holistically and also taking into consideration the human element of the business. We'll also help you see how you stack up to key NARPM benchmarks, and then really give you a specific tool that you can use to get deep insight into your labor efficiency. We call it our LER Analyzer tool. If that would be useful to you, here's how it works. You send us your P&L. We actually review the numbers with you on the call, walk through what I just described, and it's totally free, no strings attached. So if that feels like something that would be valuable to you, I just want to give you the opportunity just to raise your hand and say, yeah, reach out to me. Let's get that scheduled, and we'd be happy to do that. Okay, as we wrap up here, I want to talk about something, and I gave Jen and Adam and Mike the download on this right before we started. And you guys, I'd love just to slow down on this and interact with you a little bit, hear some of your thoughts on this. But we're developing a framework that really helps us actualize our mission internally at Profit Coach, which is helping people become and achieve more than they thought possible, and something that we think can help property managers do that at a much more sophisticated level. And essentially what it looks like is using the same kind of framework that we have been able to, as an industry, adopt with regard to financial performance, of defining the metrics that matter, measuring over those over time, benchmarking those, and then distilling best practices. This is the conversation that has really evolved over the last 3 to 4 years with the advent of the NARPM accounting standards, and now applying that same methodology and conversation to operations. So what that looks like is something that we are calling BAM cycles. BAM is something we talk a lot about here at Profit Coach. Stands for Become and Achieve More. It's part of our mission. And what these BAM cycles look like are 2 methods, data-driven approaches to driving value creation and performance in your organization. We're going to fly through this pretty fast, and we're going to do a follow-up webinar on this in April. But essentially, the basic idea here is that property managers solve problems, and they do that for their clients with a team. When value creation goes up for the clients and team performance goes up, good things happen for the company. And so that's really 2 big focal points for a property manager. And what we think needs to occur in this industry is a much more data-driven approach to process. Right now, think about it, guys, Jen, Mike, Adam, how did you design your property management processes, right? They were like handed down to you. You got them from your grandmother. Then you went to a few NARPM conferences, and you got some good ideas from some pals. And it's sort of this very iterative, but not particularly data-driven approach for most property managers. You guys are more sophisticated, but it's not very data-driven. But what would it look like to have a data-driven approach to process design? What we think that would look like is adopting a cycle of, again, this whole define, measure, benchmark, best practice methodology that we've seen tremendous results from in this industry. Look at the profitability shift on the financial side. Now, what if we did that on the operational side? Here's what this looks like to me. This looks like us acknowledging as an industry what are some of the key milestones in a leasing process, for example. All right. Certainly, one of the big things is, time to list, days on market. That's kind of the end result of a leasing process. But even more granularly, like, what are the key milestones and value experiences for the clients in that journey? Like maybe the time from signing a PMA to the completion of make ready to it getting posted on the market. What are the value milestones in the journey? How can we then measure those, both in terms of how fast did we do it and what was the experience of the owner? Hey, when we said, hey, your property's finally on the market, what was the response from an NPS or CSAT type of perspective? And then we can begin to measure those experiences across a broad number of companies in this industry, see how quickly they're doing it and what the quality of experience is, and then benchmark that and say, all right, guys, hey, average time to list is 6 days. We did it in 3 days. And now once we have that kind of information, we can begin to compare ourselves and look at best practices to improve the process, and then ultimately communicate the value that we're delivering to our clients and find new ways to create more value. I'm going to stop there. Adam, Jen, Mike, hit me with your feedback on this concept of data-driven value creation. It's something that I'm passionate about because I think the whole fee maxing game is going to contract a little bit. And we're going to have to find ways to catch up value creation with our monetization strategies. That's my opinion. Mike, what do you think?
Sure. Well, I don't want to stroke your ego too much, but I think this is the game. I think this is exactly where it is. I think that we live in a world where we measure things in months and quarters and years, but the real game is how much do you make over, or how well do you do in your business over the life of it, 10 years, 20 years. And that's a very much like a Japanese kind of 100-year thought process. But if you think about it from that terms of like, how well are you going to do over the next 10 years? Well, then a DLER that's too high is almost like your RPM gauge in the red. It's almost going to be a bellwether for probably not having good enough value creation. And it is probably a byproduct of the real success over 10 years is going to be here. And you can then tweak that up and up while you are maintaining the value creation. And that's really like the thing. So I'm excited to see what you come up with this over time, and tell me where to send all my money, and I'll be a buyer. But yeah,
it's a framework. It's a concept. Jen, how does this hit you?
It hits me right where we need to be hit right now. And I've been going to some 'tis the season for like industry economic updates, and I've been going to these, and there's a worldwide labor shortage, and I think we're all feeling it. And there's been a lot of, assigning that to COVID, and it's not. It's a new world condition. And the way this one particular economist put it that really hit home for me was, our entire lives that we can remember, the people on this call, the problem has been, do we have enough jobs for the people? So tons of attention on job creation, those numbers, unemployment rates. It's over. 180-degree shift. Do we have enough people for the jobs? So now the new marker of success is, how efficient is my labor? How good is my labor? How much does how much labor do I need? At what cost? At what level? Because, just having an availability of people in the past has glossed over a lot of that inefficiency. And with a labor shortage, I am so looking forward to something that is data-driven process design, something to help us, because when those of us here on this call, we've had guidance, but I feel very much like I'm shooting in the dark, and like, that worked, that didn't, that worked, that didn't. And I'd love to be able to sign up for something like this that guides me through it.
It's not a product, Jen. This is a concept. This is a point of view. All right.
Yeah,
but maybe the product will come out to support it. I don't know. Just kidding.
Okay. I need a concept too then.
No. I'm teasing. Of course, there's going to be a product. This is what Profit Coach is all about. All right. Great feedback, Jen. All right. So let's talk about the team performance real quickly as we wrap up. Same concept: define, measure, benchmark, best practice. And this is where we get into the whole concept of lagging indicators like, hey, our leasing team delivered these leases in so many days on market. But then we can get upstream of that with the whole concept of what we're calling SIGI metrics. Can I go home yet? And that is giving our team the level of visibility to where they know what has to be done today to win. And if we can get that right, and if we can dial that in, then all of the lagging indicators flow from there. But we're talking about solving challenges around like utilization. Is my team really as busy as they say they are? What's possible in this industry, not only within my team, comparing ABC players from a data-driven perspective, but hey, how do my maintenance coordinators compare to the maintenance coordinators over at ABC Property Management? So that kind of clarity. And ultimately, what I love about this is, yes, that data goes back into improving the process, but also goes back into coaching people, helping them up their game. This is kind of the soft side of what we've been talking about, and actually taking a more sophisticated approach to human performance. To team performance is not just about finding the cheapest person who can check boxes in your workflow, but actually skill development, and then actually expanding your team, going from a kind of a contraction mindset around labor efficiency to what are the new ways our team can grow their capability? How can we hire more people to deliver more value to our clients? And the cool thing about this is that you're going to love this, Mike. I know you're going to love this. This is a visual of the LER ratio, right? Labor efficiency goes up when you increase value creation over team performance, right? So that's the basic idea of how this impacts labor efficiency. It improves, obviously, the lives of the clients, the team, the owner, and creates an environment where your team can go home and feel like every day they show up at your company, they can win. So if this interests you, join the data-driven process workshop. This is happening on April 10th. And I'm just going to make it super easy. If you're like, oh man, I want to be part of that conversation, just join this conversation by hitting, if this would just let me launch this poll, give me 1 second. Hang on a second, guys. My polls are not cooperating. We're going to get there. Back. All right. Hang on. There we go. Coming right up. Is that the right poll? Nope, that's not the right poll. I got it. Okay, here we go. So if this would be useful, if you want to attend, just hit, yeah, sign me up. I want to be part of that workshop, and we'll get you in touch with the Zoom link for participating with Angie, Wolfgang, myself, Zach Berkumpus, and Peter Lohman. And we're going to dive into specifically, what does this look like process by process in your organization? What would it look like to have a data-driven approach to process, to value creation, and ultimately to team performance? We're going to wrap it up there, Adam. I'm going to give you the mic one last time for a final closing thought on driving team engagement. And then to you, Mike, and then to you, Jen.
Yeah, I'm not going to land this plane. I think it's, you 100% have to care from an enterprise leadership level. Your labor is 40-50% of your expenses, and to neglect that is heartbreaking from a business mind, but also just a human mind. You have these teammates who are dedicating so much of their time, their lives to you, that you have to have them engaged. And if they're not engaged, let them go find happiness somewhere else. Do yourself a favor. But love your team. Take care of them. Mike?
Yeah, I would echo a very similar thing. I think your business is your people, and especially in a service business where you don't have a tangible product. So the people part of it is really everything. Once you get to a leadership role where you're not in the trenches doing the work yourself, and a small business, as it grows, it all becomes the people.
Yeah. Jen, wrap us up.
To just build on what Mike had said there, you know, I sell their labor every day, their time, and every day they come into work, they've chosen us, and every day, you know, we continue to offer them employment, we've chosen them. And if there were machines that did property management work, I'd probably put them under roof and have cameras and have maintenance men. These machines, these people leave every day, get approached by other employers, they get other ideas. And so I have to work really hard to keep them active and engaged here. And sometimes making a comparison to a machine helps me think about the amount of work that should be taking me and effort. Yeah.
Get your mindset up for making that investment. Yeah. All right, folks, thank you so much. Join us for the Data-Driven Process Design Workshop on April 10th at 12 p.m. CT. We want to beat the benchmark collectively, not just in finance, but in operations. This is the future of property management, I'm convinced. And then next Profit Power Hour, April 24th at 12 p.m. CT, episode 4 of the 2024 Profit Power Hour. Thank you, Adam, Mike, Jen, and everybody for joining us live today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.